Today, I'll tell you a story so quietly powerful, it unfolds like a whisper across the wide-open plains of the Old West, where the sky feels endless and the silence can be deadly. This is where destiny waits between heartbeat and breath, where two strangers meet at the edge of everything they know. It all began with a chance meeting by running water, a moment so fragile yet strong enough to redraw the boundaries between enemy and ally. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Arizona Territory, 1875. The late afternoon sun bore down without mercy, baking the dirt streets of Copper Creek, a stubborn frontier town clinging to the edge of disputed land. Inside the trading post, Eira Rowan brushed sweat from her temple while straightening fresh bolts of cloth recently hauled in by freight wagon. Her pale gold hair was drawn back in a tight, no-nonsense braid, catching streaks of sunlight slipping through the dusty windows. "Eira, are those deliveries finished yet?" Bram Rowan's voice drifted in from the storeroom, still carrying faint traces of an English accent that 15 years in Arizona hadn't fully worn away. "Almost done, Father," she answered, smoothing a loose strand behind her ear. At 22, Eira carried herself with a quiet resolve that set her apart from most young women in Copper Creek. While others chased courtship and comfort, she found purpose in keeping the trading post running, an enterprise her father had built from the ground up after crossing the ocean with nothing but grit. The bell above the door rang, sharp and sudden, and Eira turned instinctively toward the entrance. Her practiced smile faltered. Morrow Dex, captain of the cavalry, filled the doorway. His blue uniform looked untouched by the heat, crisp and deliberate. He removed his hat with measured ease. "Miss Rowan," he said, "you're looking well today." Eira inclined her head, polite but guarded. "Captain, how may I help you?" His gaze lingered longer than necessary. "Your father's supply shipment for the fort arrived." "Yes," she replied evenly. "They came in yesterday. Everything is ready." As if summoned by name alone, Bram stepped out from the back room, his lined face brightening. "Captain Dex, the army goods are prepared. Eira, fetch the manifest, would you?" She welcomed the task, glad for a reason to step away from the captain's steady stare. Over the past months, Dex had made his intentions unmistakable, appearing too often, inventing reasons to speak with her. Bram saw it as opportunity. A cavalry captain promised stability. Yet something in Dex's controlled smile left Eira uneasy. Later that afternoon, once the supply wagon had rattled out of town, Eira seized her chance for quiet. "Father, I need to take Greta Lowen's medicine out to her place." "She's been expecting it," Bram replied with a wave of his hand. "Be back before sundown." Talk around town spoke of Apache movement north of Copper Creek. Still, Eira saddled her palomino, Ember Dust, securing the medicine in her saddlebag. Greta's homestead lay 3 miles beyond town, far enough to taste freedom. The desert opened around her in hues of red and gold. Eira drew in the sharp scent of sage and dust, savoring the stillness. These moments alone were rare, precious. Beyond the town's expectations, she could simply breathe. Greta welcomed her warmly and insisted on tea and conversation. By the time Eira took her leave, the sun hovered low against the horizon. To keep her promise, she chose a narrow canyon shortcut. She nudged Ember Dust into a steady trot. Shadows stretched across the stone walls, staining them purple and crimson. Then she stopped short. A man knelt beside a thin stream, filling a water skin. Not a settler. Long black hair, Apache clothing, a rifle rested close at hand. Eira's breath caught. She should turn back, but Ember Dust's hooves had already announced her presence. The man rose in one smooth motion, rifle lifted. their eyes locked across 20 feet of open ground. He was younger than she'd expected, no more than 25, with sharp features shaped by the land itself. His dark eyes assessed her quickly. "I mean no harm," Eira said, keeping her hands visible on the saddle horn. He studied her, head tilted. When he spoke, his English was clear and calm. "You ride alone. That is dangerous." "I'm heading back to town," she said, nodding toward Copper Creek. "I was delivering medicine." Something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps. "You are not a medicine woman, but you carry medicine." He gestured ahead. "Soldiers patrol beyond the ridge. 6 men. You should wait." Eira hesitated, caught between fear and an instinct she didn't understand. "Why warn me?" "You travel in peace," he replied with a slight shrug. "So do I. Today." Wind whispered through the canyon. Water murmured over stone. "My name is Eira," she said at last. A long moment passed before he answered. "I am called Zhak." "Thank you for the warning," she said carefully. He secured his waterskin and stepped back, already fading into the canyon's shadow, leaving behind silence and the echo of a meeting neither of them would forget. "The patrol won't linger," Zhak said quietly. "You'll have your road soon." Instead of leaving, he lowered himself onto a boulder, rifle resting across his knees, eyes fixed on the ridge he had warned her about. Still in the saddle, Eira Rowan watched him watch the land, unsure whether to speak. Then, without turning his head, he said, "Your hair, it looks like the desert at first light." The simple, unexpected beauty of the words caught her off guard. Before she could answer, he lifted a hand, listening. Far off, faint hoofbeats drifted through the canyon, then faded. Zhak rose smoothly to his feet. "They're moving west now," he said. "You can ride." He reached into his belt and drew out a small leather pouch, approaching slowly until he stood beside Ember Dust. Careful, respectful. He held the pouch out to her. "For the one who needed medicine," he said. "Willow bark, for pain." Eira hesitated, then accepted it. Their fingers brushed. "Thank you." Their eyes met again, and something quiet passed between them, an unspoken awareness born in a lonely place where 2 worlds had briefly touched. "Ride safe, Eira," he said softly, hair like the morning sun. Then he stepped back, retreating into the canyon shadows until he seemed less a man than part of the land itself. For several heartbeats, Eira did not move. Then she closed her fingers around the pouch and urged Ember Dust forward. By the time Copper Creek came into view, twilight had settled into dusk. Lamplight glowed through the trading post windows. After dismounting, Eira slipped the leather pouch into her pocket, a secret reminder of something that felt unreal, yet pressed solidly against her hip. The warmth of his touch lingered, as did the way her chest had tightened when he spoke her name. That night, standing before her small mirror, she studied her reflection, as if seeing herself anew, wondering how the world must look through the eyes of a man called Zhak, whose voice carried the cadence of desert wind and whose gaze held a depth she could not yet measure. 2 weeks passed in the steady rhythm of frontier life, stock to tally, customers to serve, manners to maintain. Yet Eira moved through it all distracted, her thoughts returning again and again to the canyon. Each evening, she found herself at her window, staring toward the distant mountains that marked the boundary between her life and his. She told herself it meant nothing, only curiosity. "You seem far away these days," Bram Rowan remarked one evening as they closed the shop. "Captain Morrow Dex asked about you again." Eira aligned ledger books that didn't need straightening. "Did he?" Bram leaned against the counter. He's a respectable man, a steady position. He could offer security. I'm not looking to be secured, she replied more sharply than intended. Bram sighed. This isn't England. A woman alone out here. I'm not alone. I have you, he said gently, but I won't always. I don't want to hear that, Eira cut in, unable to bear the familiar shadow that crossed his face. The winter cough had taken more from him than he admitted. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Eira rose quietly and opened her window, letting the cool desert air spill in. The full moon cast copper creak in silver. Movement near the cottonwood behind the store caught her eye. Her breath quickened as a tall figure stepped into the light. Zhak. He stood still, looking straight at her window. When their eyes met, he lifted one hand, then gestured toward the creek. Eira hesitated only a moment. She took her shawl, slipped down the stairs without a sound, avoided the step that creaked, and eased out the back door. Moonlight guided her to the water, where he waited. You shouldn't be here, she whispered when she reached him. It's dangerous. Yes. His face was unreadable. But I had to come. Why? He glanced up at the sky. I was sent to watch the soldiers. They planned something against my people. His eyes returned to hers. Yet every night my thoughts came back here. To you. The honesty between them hung heavy. I've thought of you too, Eira admitted, the darkness making truth easier. Zhak stepped closer. Careful. Deliberate. Our people have been fighting for generations. This path is foolish. Then why walk it? Some roads choose us, he said simply, even when they lead somewhere hard. He gestured to a fallen log by the creek, and together they sat. They sat close without touching, listening to water slip softly over stone. Tell me about your people, Eira Rowan said. And he did. Zhak spoke of the Chiricahua, of customs carried through generations, of hardship and endurance, of his place as both fighter and go-between. He believed there might still be a way for his people to remain who they were while the world pressed in on them. He told her of a chief who sought words before bullets, even as others demanded war, and of his own task, to gather what truth he could to spare his people more blood. The white leader's promise, he said quietly, then break them. Every line crossed, every treaty undone. Eira could not argue the truth of it. Not all settlers want fighting, she said. No, he answered, turning fully toward her. But enough do. Your father, he continued, he is respected in town. Yes, she said, unsure where this led. There are others like him, Zhak said. People who might listen, if peace were offered honestly. Understanding took hold. You're trying to open a path between your chief and the town. He nodded. Some of us believe it's the only way our children survive. But first we must find hearts willing to hear. He paused. That is why I came tonight, at first. Then his hand moved, slow and deliberate, giving her time to pull away, until his fingers brushed hers. Now, he said softly, I came because something draws me to you, like the moon pulls the tide. The quiet poetry of it stirred something deep inside her. Eira turned her palm to meet his, their fingers threading together. This is madness, she whispered. Yes, he agreed, just as softly. Beautiful madness. Their first kiss was careful, tentative, a crossing into forbidden ground. When they parted, Eira felt breathless, as if she'd run miles under a desert sun. Moonlight filled Zhak's eyes with wonder and a question. She answered by leaning in again, her hand lifting to his cheek. The second kiss deepened, carrying the weight of knowing. Whatever had sparked between them was real, undeniable and dangerous. In the days that followed, Eira lived in two worlds at once. The visible one of the trading post, church, socials, and Morrow Dex's unwanted attention, and the hidden one that awakened after dark, when she slipped away to meet Zhak by the creek. Each night they shared more. He taught her words from his language. She told him of England and the life Eira Rowan had left behind. He showed her how his people read the stars. She brought books of poetry that made him smile at their attempt to capture what his people spoke through story and song. "My father would listen to you," she told him one night, nearly 2 weeks into their secret meetings. "Others might too. The Reverend, Greta Lowen, even her son." Hope lit Zhak's face. "You would help arrange such a meeting?" "Yes," she said, "but it must be done carefully." "Dex and his men want war," Zhak said grimly. "They've attacked 3 hunting parties this month, calling them war bands." "They were families," Eira said, dread tightening her chest. "When could your chief come?" "At the next full moon," he answered. "Somewhere away from the fort and town." They planned in low voices, hands clasped tight, as if their joined fingers could span the distance between their worlds. When dawn threatened the eastern sky, they knew time was nearly gone. "Tomorrow night," Zhak said, tracing her cheek with gentle fingers. "I will bring you something." "You don't need gifts," Eira smiled. "This one matters," he said after a pause, "for what we're trying to do, and for what's growing between us." Their parting kiss lingered, heavy with promise and fear, the ache of separation made sharper by an uncertain future. Eira didn't see the shadow slip from behind the livery stable as she returned to the trading post. She didn't notice the narrowed eyes tracking Zhak into the pre-dawn dark, or the thin smile twisting Morrow Dex's mouth as he formed plans of his own. The next evening brought trouble. As Eira helped close the shop, Bram said, "The Ardent line expects us for dinner. Lynn Ardent asked specifically for you." Her heart sank. "Tonight? I'm tired, Father. Perhaps another evening?" "I've already agreed," Bram said firm. "The captain will be there. Wear your blue dress." The meaning was plain. With their standing and an unmarried daughter, the Ardent family was offering Dex another chance. Trapped by obligation and unable to explain, Eira nodded. Through the long dinner, she spoke with careful politeness, her thoughts straining toward the creek where Zhak would be waiting. Dex watched her with predatory focus, mistaking her distraction for nerves. "Miss Rowan," Morrow Dex said during a pause in the conversation, his tone casual. "I've been meaning to mention, we've received reports of Apache scouts near town. You shouldn't be traveling alone, especially after dark." Eira Rowan nearly let her fork slip from her fingers. "Scouts?" she asked carefully. "You're certain?" "Quite," he replied. His smile never reached his eyes. "In fact, I've doubled the night patrols. For everyone's safety," he added, placing deliberate weight on the final word. A chill crept through Eira. Did he know? Had he seen something? She lifted her glass and took a measured sip, forcing her hand to steady. "That sounds wise," she said. "I thought so." Dex turned toward Bram Rowan. "Mr. Rowan, there's a matter I'd like to discuss with you privately, perhaps after dinner." It was near midnight when they finally returned home. Eira paced her room, torn between fear for Zhak's safety and the desperate hope that he had stayed away from the creek. From her window, she watched soldiers moving through Copper Creek, lanterns swinging like restless stars. Sleep came in fragments, broken by dreams of pursuit and loss. She woke to her father's voice, sharp with urgency. "Eira, come down here, now." She dressed quickly and hurried downstairs. Bram stood with Dex and two uniformed soldiers. Her father looked pale and strained. The captain, by contrast, looked satisfied. "Tell her, Captain," Bram said tightly. Dex stepped forward. "Mr. Rowan, before dawn we apprehended an Apache warrior." He opened his hand. Resting in his palm was a small carved object that made Eira's blood run cold. A wooden amulet on a leather cord. "He was carrying this," Dex said. "Do you recognize it?" Eira kept her face still. "Should I?" Dex studied her closely. An interesting question. When questioned, the Apache claimed it was meant as a gift for a woman in town. His eyes narrowed. A woman with hair like morning sunlight. Bram let out a pained breath. "Eira, tell me you haven't—" "Where is he?" Eira cut in, abandoning caution. "What have you done with him?" Dex's smile sharpened. "He's been taken to Fort Grant. Charges include espionage, infiltration, possibly involvement in recent attacks on settler caravans." "That's absurd," Eira said. "He's been working for peace." The words escaped her before she could stop them. Bram's face drained of color. "You've spoken to him?" he demanded. "Eira, how could you be so reckless? He's not what the captain says." "He is," Eira insisted, turning to her father. "His name is Zhak. He represents a Chiricahua faction seeking negotiation, not war. He came looking for allies." Dex interjected smoothly. "A convenient tale. One a young woman might be inclined to believe." Eira faced him squarely. "I want to see him." "Impossible," Dex replied. "He's being transferred to Fort Bowie for a military trial." "On what evidence?" Dex's expression hardened. "His presence near town is evidence enough. And now we know he was attempting to influence a citizen, possibly to gather intelligence." He turned to Bram. "Sir, I strongly advise keeping a close watch on your daughter, for her own protection." After the soldiers left, Bram sank into a chair, suddenly looking every bit his age. "How long?" he asked quietly. "How long have you been seeing him?" Eira knelt beside him. 3 weeks. "Father, please believe me. Zhak wants to stop bloodshed, not cause it." Bram rubbed his temples. "Do you realize what you've done? If the town finds out—" "I don't care what the town thinks." "You should," he snapped. "This isn't about reputation. It's about survival. Dex could accuse you of aiding the enemy." The weight of it settled fully on her. Dex had Zhak, and leverage over her as well. Yet her fear for herself was nothing beside her terror for Zhak. Military trials for Apache were swift and unforgiving. "I have to help him," she whispered. Bram took her hands. "Listen to me. You will do nothing. Say nothing. For now we cooperate." His voice softened. "I don't know what passed between you and that man. Maybe I don't want to. But I know my daughter." "If you believe he's innocent," she said quietly. Bram met her eyes. "I believe that you believe he is." Bram Rowan spoke carefully. "That's enough for me to want answers before condemning any man." He squeezed her hands. "But we must be smart, not reckless." In the days that followed, Eira Rowan wore a mask of quiet obedience. She helped customers, attended church, and even endured a chaperoned walk with Morrow Dex, who clearly savored the control he now held over her. "He asked for you," Dex said lightly as they passed the schoolhouse. "Before we took him away, he kept saying he'd made you a promise." Eira's heart tightened. "And what promise was that, Captain?" Dex's smile was thin. "That he would come back for you. Quite romantic, for a savage." He stopped and faced her. "Of course, that's not likely now. The tribunal meets next week." Holding her composure together by sheer will, Eira asked, "And if he's found innocent?" "Innocent?" Dex laughed softly. "My dear Miss Rowan, Apaches are never found innocent. That night, Eira made her choice. After Bram retired, complaining of his cough and exhaustion, she lifted the loose floorboard and retrieved the small leather pouch Zhak had once given her, the willow bark medicine. She wrote a note and left it on the table. My dearest father, forgive what I must do. I cannot stand by while an innocent man faces death for seeking peace. By the time you read this, I will be on the road to Fort Bowie. Do not fear for me. I have help. Please understand that I must follow my conscience, even when it leads away from safety. Your loving daughter, Eira. She dressed for travel. Riding skirt, sturdy boots, dark shawl. Into a small pack she placed provisions, her mother's locket, and the wooden amulet Dex had foolishly returned to her as evidence. The amulet was simple and powerful, a carved disc showing a mountain, a river, and two figures beneath the stars. A promise of two worlds meeting. She slipped it over her head, letting it rest against her heart. In the deepest hour of night, when patrols thinned, Eira led Emberdust from the stable behind the trading post. The horse moved silently, as if understanding. Once beyond town, she mounted and turned east, toward Fort Bowie and toward Apache lands beyond. The journey would be dangerous, the outcome uncertain, but the alternative was impossible. As dawn colored the horizon, Eira Rowan left behind the only life she had known, carrying a promise she meant to keep. Copper Creek slept on, unaware that its merchant's daughter had crossed a line that would forever shift the boundary between warring worlds. The road to Fort Bowie was harsh. Eira avoided open trails, following hidden routes Zhak had once described beneath moonlight. After 3 days of relentless riding, the fort rose before her. Wood and stone, stark against the desert. A direct approach would mean death. She camped instead in a sheltered canyon, weighing her few options. She could not break into a military fort alone. She needed knowledge. And allies. On the 4th morning, fate intervened. While drawing water from a spring, Eira encountered an elderly Mexican woman gathering herbs. "Good morning," Eira said cautiously. The woman studied her. "You are far from town, señorita. These lands are not kind to women alone." "I'm looking for someone," Eira replied. "A prisoner at the fort." Something flickered in the woman's eyes. "Many pass through Fort Bowie. Few leave." Eira touched the amulet beneath her blouse. "He is Apache. Chiricahua. His name is Zhak." The woman said nothing, continuing her work. At last, she straightened. "My son delivers laundry to the fort. Come, eat with us. Then we will see." Alma Reyes led Eira to a small adobe home set against the canyon wall. Over beans and tortillas, Eira told her story. When she finished, Yenzo Reyes spoke. "The Apache you seek arrived 3 days ago. They hold him in the southern stockade." Hope surged. "Is he alive?" "They question him every day," Yenzo said grimly. "They want information about his people's camps." "Has the tribunal begun?" "No. Darius Kell arrives tomorrow. The trial follows." Alma, who had listened in silence, finally spoke. "That young Apache. He truly seeks peace." "Yes," Eira Rowan said without hesitation. "He speaks for a chief who believes our peoples can live side by side." The old woman nodded slowly. "My people walked this land long before the Americans, and before many Apache. We have seen blood spilled by Spaniards, Mexicans, Americans, and tribes alike." She held Eira's gaze. "All claiming the same earth. Those who seek peace must be guarded." By nightfall, a plan had taken shape. Yenzo Reyes, with civilian access to the fort, would pass a message to Zhak. At the same time, Alma Reyes sent quiet word through hidden channels to the mountain camps. If Zhak truly spoke for peace, his people needed to know he'd been taken, and they might answer. 2 taut days passed. Eira stayed hidden in Alma's house, watching the distant fort through a narrow window, picturing Zhak behind its walls. On the 3rd morning, Yenzo returned from his laundry run. "He got your message," he said. "He asked me to tell you. The promise still stands." Tears welled in Eira's eyes. "He's alive." Yenzo hesitated, then produced a small scrap of paper. He wrote this when the guards weren't looking. The note was brief, the script careful. "Eira, tribunal tomorrow. Whatever comes, meeting you changed everything. You showed me that bridges are possible. Look west when the sun meets the earth. If I am free, I will find you." That night, riders came. 3 Apache men emerged from the darkness like smoke. They spoke with Alma in Spanish, their faces grave as she explained. The eldest studied Eira with a measured stare, then spoke in halting English. "You carry Zhak's amulet." Eira drew the wooden pendant from beneath her blouse. "Yes." He took it, examined the carving, then passed it to the others. Recognition rippled among them. "This bears the mark of Kyle," the man said. "Zhak is his son." The truth struck hard. Zhak had never spoken of it, only of a leader who sought words over war. "Does his father know?" Eira asked. "He was sent to observe, not to be captured," the warrior replied, reproach edged in his tone. "And not to take a white woman as ally." Eira met his eyes steadily. "I believe in what he's trying to build. Peace between our peoples." The men conferred in low voices. Then the eldest turned back. "We will help, not for you, for the chief's son." Their plan was bold in its simplicity. The Ash Ridge men would raise a diversion north of the fort. Not an attack, just enough presence to pull soldiers away. Yenzo would deliver supplies to the stockade at the right moment, creating a narrow opening. The rest would hinge on timing, nerve, and luck. Dawn broke on the day of the tribunal. Eira paced Alma's small home, dread tightening with each thought of Zhak before judges who had already decided his fate. When Yenzo left with his laundry cart, she clasped his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once. "May God protect you both." The hours dragged. Eira helped Alma prepare food, her hands moving by habit while her mind stayed fixed on the fort. By late afternoon, tension pulled her nerves tight as wire. "It's time," Alma said, handing her a bundle. "Change." The simple dress and shawl would help her blend in. Eira dressed quickly, tucking her hair beneath a worn rebozo as Alma showed her. Together they followed a dry wash that hid them from watchful eyes. The sun dipped toward its meeting with the earth. The fort stood black against a reddening sky. "There," Alma whispered, pointing to cottonwoods where the wash widened. "We wait." They settled among the trees as the last light gilded the desert. Eira closed her fist around the amulet, her heart hammering. Then, commotion from the fort. Shouts, horses. The diversion had begun. "Now we pray," Alma murmured, her fingers moving over rosary beads. Time blurred, minutes or hours, until, as the first stars appeared, hoofbeats sounded from the fort's direction. Eira tensed, ready to run if soldiers had found them. 2 riders slipped out of the darkness, Yenzo Reyes, and beside him, a silhouette Eira Rowan would know anywhere. "Zhak," she breathed, rising. He swung down in one smooth motion and crossed the distance in long strides. When he reached her, his hands framed her face as if she might vanish. "You came for me," he said, awe roughening his voice. "You promised you would return," she answered simply. "So I came." Their reunion was cut short by Yenzo's sharp warning. "Riders from the east, we have to move, now." Zhak pulled Eira toward the horses. My people are in the mountains. We ride tonight. The truth struck hard. Going with him meant leaving everything. Her father, Copper Creek, the life she had known, perhaps forever. Zhak read the storm in her eyes. I would never ask you to choose between worlds, he said softly. If you want to go back to your father. No, Eira cut in, certainty settling like a stone. My path is with you, but my father needs to know I'm safe. Ienzo stepped forward. I'll send word. I'll tell him his daughter followed her heart. Moments later, Eira found herself in the saddle beside Zhak, riding west into thickening night. Behind them, torches flared around the fort like fallen stars as the escape was discovered. They pushed hard through darkness along routes only Zhak could see. When the horses needed breath, they paused in a sheltered arroyo. The tribunal? Eira asked as they shared water from his canteen. What happened? Zhak's jaw tightened. They decided before it began. Morrow Dex swore I led raids, said I'd used you to gather information. His fingers closed around hers. Then Ienzo brought word of Apache riders to the north. In the confusion, he left a key. And now? She asked. Zhak looked to the mountains, black against a sky sown with stars. We go to my father. We tell him who wants war, and who might stand for peace. He met her gaze. The way ahead is dangerous. Then we walk it together, Eira said, threading her fingers with his. By dawn, they reached the foothills. Sunrise painted the western peaks in pale rose. Zhak scanned the land, then pointed to a faint trail climbing the slope. There, near the high springs, my father's people will be camped. They climbed steadily as desert gave way to juniper and pine, the air cooling and sweetening. By midday, they reached a sheltered plateau of towering rock. Zhak lifted a hand in signal. From stone and shadow, Apache warriors appeared, bows drawn, rifles ready. Zhak called to the lead warrior in their shared tongue. Words flew too fast for Eira to follow. The weapons lowered. One man vanished into the rocks. They'll take us to my father, Zhak said. He's been waiting. Will he accept me? Eira asked, suddenly aware of how far from home she stood. Zhak's eyes softened. You risked everything to save his son. He will hear that. Kale's camp was larger than she expected. Dozens of people living in balance with the mountain. Their arrival stirred quiet attention as Zhak led her to the central shelter. A tall, dignified man emerged, weathered by years and duty. Silver threaded his hair. Strength held his posture. The likeness was unmistakable. Father and son held each other's gaze. Then Kale stepped forward, placing his hands on Zhak's shoulders. No words passed, yet relief shone in both faces. Kale's eyes turned to Eira. He studied her, then spoke in clear English. My son says you believe in bridges between worlds. I do, Eira answered steadily. And I believe your son is building one. Bridges burn, Kale said, with blood on both sides. Then we build stronger ones, Eira replied, with truth as the foundation. Something like approval flickered in his eyes. He motioned them inside. Seated around a small fire, Zhak told everything, the army's provocations, Dex's lies, and the settlers who might listen. Eira added what she knew of who would hear peace, and who never would. Kale listened in silence. When they finished, he looked to Eira. You left your world behind. I left a world of lies, she said gently, for one that might be honest. For truth, Eira Rowan said, steady and clear, for a chance to help shape something better. Kale nodded once. The soldiers will hunt you both, he warned. They will call you a traitor to your people. Some will, Eira replied. others may see differently, with time. As dusk fell, a council fire was kindled. Kyle summoned his advisors, and Eira watched the currents within the tribe, those who supported negotiation and those who believed only resistance could preserve their way of life. Zhak spoke with quiet fire about a future without endless bloodshed. When doubts rose, he gestured to Eira. She came to us by choice, not capture. There are settlers like her, people who want peace, not conquest. We must find them and speak with them. Later, beneath a sky crowded with stars, Zhak led Eira to a small shelter prepared at the edge of camp. "Tomorrow," he said, "messengers will ride to Alma Reyes. She'll contact your father and tell him you're safe." Eira swallowed past the tightness in her throat. "Do you think he'll understand?" "He's your father," Zhak said gently. "He will understand love, even when it leads somewhere unexpected." He took her hands. "Rest. The road ahead is long. Together," she reminded him, echoing her words from before. "Together," he agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss that carried futures yet unwritten. 3 months later, Eira stood at a canyon's edge as sunrise washed the desert in amber and gold. The amulet Zhak had carved hung openly at her neck, a sign of the bridge they were still building. The months had changed her. She learned the ways of the Chiricahua, their language, their bond with the land, their resilience under constant pressure. In turn, she became a trusted voice in Kale's council, offering insight into settler thinking and helping shape messages meant for ears willing to hear. Alma Reyes proved invaluable, keeping a quiet line open between the camp and those seeking paths other than bloodshed. Through her came 3 letters from Eira Rowan, each carrying worry, then understanding. The last brought news both troubling and hopeful. Morrow Dex had been reassigned after complaints about his tactics. A more measured officer, Oren Vale, had reopened talks with several tribes. Bram had cautiously joined a small group of merchants advocating peaceful trade over force. "You stand between worlds now," Zhak said, approaching, his steps soundless on stone. The mountains had sharpened him. Responsibility had deepened his gaze. Yet when he looked at Eira, the same wonder remained. "As do you," she said, taking his hand. "My father meets with the new fort commander tomorrow," Zhak said, "the first such meeting in many seasons." "Are you afraid?" "Cautious," he corrected, "but hopeful. Small steps toward a distant horizon." Eira leaned into him. "Your father says I may accompany him, as translator." Surprise and pride crossed Zhak's face. "You've earned his trust." "I'm not an outsider anymore," she said softly, "nor fully inside. I stand on the bridge we're building." Zhak framed her face. "Some would say that means belonging nowhere." "Or belonging everywhere," Eira answered, "creating something new." His smile deepened. "This is why I love you. You see possibility where others see only division." The word, love, still sent warmth through her. Their bond, forged in danger and purpose, was something neither could have imagined by the creek in Copper Creek. "Do you regret it?" Zhak asked, a rare vulnerability in his voice. "Leaving your world?" Eira thought of the trading post, the neat patterns of town life, the future once laid out for her. "I didn't leave my world," she said, certain. "I helped build a better one. With you." Zhak drew her close, his embrace speaking gratitude, devotion, and shared resolve. As they stood silhouetted against the rising sun, Eira remembered the promise that had guided her through darkness. "I will return for you." He had kept it, and together they were making new promises, to each other, to their peoples, and to a future where bridges replaced boundaries. In the distance, dust lifted from approaching riders, the messengers returning with confirmation of tomorrow's meeting. Another step forward, another chance to strengthen the bridge. Eira took Zhak's hand, ready to walk on, into whatever waited for them, together. Across the wide sweep of human history, it's at the fragile edges, those disputed spaces where worlds collide, that the truest stories of courage and change are born. The journey of Eira Rowan and Zhak speaks to something enduring, a truth that echoes across generations. The bravery to look past the lines we draw between us and them. Their love unfolds on the unforgiving American frontier, a land scarred by blood and suspicion, where fear hardened boundaries into walls. And yet, within that harsh country, they found what so many of us still search for, the recognition of shared humanity in someone we were taught to distrust. What lingers most is not the romance alone, but the quiet uprising it represents. When Eira chooses to help Zhak escape, when she rides with him into an uncertain future, she isn't merely following her heart. She is turning away from the comforting falsehoods that promised safety at the cost of truth. And when Zhak risks trust in Eira, he proves that even amid deep conflict, individual bonds can rise above collective hatred. Perhaps that is why love across boundaries never loses its pull. Such stories remind us that the bravest act is not always standing against others, but standing for connection, despite the forces determined to keep us apart. Eira and Zhak stand on their bridge between worlds not as people without a home, but as pioneers of a new vision, one where belonging is shaped by commitment, not birthright. In our own divided age, their story offers a gentle yet powerful truth. The borders we defend so fiercely, between nations, cultures, even hearts, are human creations, and what humans create, humans can reshape. The road may be perilous and unclear, as it was for these two in the Arizona territory, but those who dare to walk it may build something both necessary and beautiful, a bridge toward compassion. For love, in its truest form, has never honored the boundaries we impose. Like water, it finds passage through the smallest cracks in our walls. And in doing so, it reveals not weakness, but our greatest strength, the capacity to recognize ourselves in another's eyes, even when the world insists they are strangers. This is the promise Eira and Zhak leave with us, that even in the harshest landscapes of conflict, understanding can take root and grow, and from such fragile beginnings, new worlds may emerge, not through conquest or surrender, but through the quiet courage of hearts willing to see beyond division. May we all find the resolve to build such bridges in our own lives. And may we remember that sometimes the most meaningful journeys begin with a single promise. Kept against all odds, finally let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for being here and letting this story live within your heart. If it moved you, I hope you'll walk beside us through more journeys of the Wild West, stories filled with truth, endurance, and grace. Subscribe, share your thoughts, and stay close. Together we'll keep riding across these wide-open lands of memory and hope. Thank you. Aviso legal. Disclaimer. Our narratives bring inspiration from the past, recreated with fictional and dramatized interpretations for entertainment purposes only. AI tools serve as creative support, but the storytelling, editing, and emotional refinement are handled by our team to guarantee authenticity. We comply with content policies for AI use, avoiding impersonations, identity fabrication, or historically misleading images. All visual and audio content is legally sourced. Redistribution or modification requires prior written approval. Thank you for honoring creativity, collaboration, and storytelling done with heart.